Second Chance Ministry Radio proudly presents Christmas Stories from the Heart. Enjoy and have a glorious day.
Christmas Reflections. Thanks be unto God for His unspeakable gift. 2 Corinthians 9:15. The Arrival by Max Lucado from God Came Near. The noise and the bustle began earlier than usual in the village. As night gave way to dawn, people were already on the streets. Vendors were positioning themselves on the corners of the most heavily traveled avenues. Store owners were unlocking the doors to their shops. Children were awakened by the excited barking of the street dogs and the complaints of donkeys pulling carts. The owner of the inn had awakened earlier than most in the town. After all, the inn was full, all the beds taken. Every available mat or blanket had been put to use. Soon all the customers would be stirring, and there would be a lot of work to do. One's imagination is kindled thinking about the conversation of the innkeeper and his family at the breakfast table. Did anyone mention the arrival of the young couple the night before? Did anyone ask about their welfare? Did anyone comment on the pregnancy of the girl on the donkey? Perhaps someone raised the subject. But at best it was raised, not discussed. There was nothing that novel about them. They were possibly one of several families turned away that night. Besides, who had time to talk about them when there was so much excitement in the air? Augustus did the economy of Bethlehem a favor when he decreed that a census should be taken. Who could remember when such commerce had hit the village? No, it is doubtful that anyone mentioned the couple's arrival or wondered about the condition of the girl. They were too busy. The day was upon them. The day's bread had to be made. The morning's chores had to be done. There was too much to do to imagine that the impossible had occurred. God had entered the world as a baby. Yet were someone to chance upon the sheep stable on the outskirts of Bethlehem that morning, what a peculiar scene they would behold. The stable stinks like all stables do. The stench of urine, dung, and sheep reeks pungently in the air. The ground is hard, the hay scarce. Cobwebs cling to the ceiling, and a mouse scurries across the floor. A more lowly place of birth could not exist. Off to one side sits a group of shepherds. They sit silently on the floor, perhaps perplexed, perhaps in awe, no doubt in amazement. Their night watch had been interrupted by an explosion of light from heaven and a symphony of angels. God goes to those who have time to hear Him. So on this cloudless night he went to simple shepherds. Near the young mother sits the weary father. If anyone is dozing, he is. He can't remember the last time he sat down. And now that the excitement has subsided a bit, now that Mary and the baby are comfortable, he leans against the wall of the stable and feels his eyes grow heavy. He still hasn't figured it all out. The mystery of the event puzzles him. But he hasn't the energy to wrestle with the questions. What's important is that the baby is fine and that Mary is safe. As sleep comes, he remembers the name the angel told him to use, Jesus. We will call him Jesus. Wide awake is Mary. My, how young she looks. Her head rests on the soft leather of Joseph's saddle. The pain has been eclipsed by wonder. She looks into the face of the baby, her son, her Lord, His Majesty. At this point in history, the human being who best understands who God is and what He is doing is a teenage girl in a smelly stable. She can't take her eyes off Him. Somehow, Mary knows she is holding God. So this is He, She remembers the words of the angel, "His kingdom will never end." He looks like anything but a king. His face is prunish and red. His cry, though strong and healthy, is still the helpless and piercing cry of a baby. And he is absolutely dependent upon Mary for his well-being. Majesty in the midst of the mundane, holiness in the filth of sheep manure and sweat, divinity entering the world on the floor of a stable, through the womb of a teenager, and in the presence of a carpenter. She touches the face of the infant God. How long was your journey? This baby had overlooked the universe. These rags keeping him warm were the robes of eternity. His golden throne room had been abandoned in favor of a dirty sheep pen, and worshipping angels had been replaced with kind but bewildered shepherds. Meanwhile, the city hums. The merchants are unaware that God has visited their planet. The innkeeper would never believe that he had just sent God into the cold, and the people would scoff at anyone who told them the Messiah lay in the arms of a teenager on the outskirts of their village. They were all too busy to consider the possibility. Those who missed His Majesty's arrival that night missed it not because of evil acts or malice. No, they missed it because they simply weren't looking. Little has changed in the last 2,000 years, has it? Daily Gifts by Charles R. Swindoll, from The Finishing Touch. It's not too early to give some things away this Christmas, not just on Christmas Day, but during all the days leading up to December 25. We could call these daily gifts our Christmas projects. Maybe one per day from now till then. Here are a few suggestions. Mend a quarrel. Seek out a forgotten friend. Dismiss suspicion. Write a long overdue love note. Hug someone tightly and whisper, "I love you so." Forgive an enemy. Be gentle and patient with an angry person. Express appreciation. Gladden the heart of a child. Find the time to keep a promise. Make or bake something for someone else, anonymously. Release a grudge. Listen. Speak kindly to a stranger. Enter into another's sorrow. Smile, laugh a little more. Take a walk with a friend. Kneel down and pat a dog. Read a poem or two to your mate or friend. Lessen your demands on others. Play some beautiful music during the evening meal. Apologize if you were wrong. Turn off the television and talk. Treat someone to an ice cream cone. Yogurt would be fine. Do the dishes for the family. Pray for someone who helped you when you hurt. Fix breakfast on Saturday morning. Give a soft answer even though you feel strongly. Encourage an older person. Point out one thing you appreciate most about someone you work with or live near. Offer to babysit for a weary mother. Give your teacher a break. Be especially cooperative. Let's make Christmas one long, extended gift of ourselves to others, unselfishly, without announcement, or obligation, or reservation, or hypocrisy. This is Christianity, isn't it? The Stable by Joni Eareckson Tada, from A Christmas Longing. It was a chilly night in the little Judean town of Bethlehem, the kind of night when you want to escape the cold, damp air and find warmth and security inside a cozy inn. And people crowded tightly into the inn at the end of the street. They left their donkeys and camels in the back stable and closed the door against the night air. Inside, the inn buzzed with laughter and chatter. Distant relatives who had not seen each other in years renewed family ties over bowls of hot soup and goblets of wine. They broke bread together, swapping stories of their journeys. A teenage boy strummed his lyre in the corner, and several fathers clapped their hands in time to the music. In the rush to serve tables, the innkeeper, balancing a tray of breads and meats, answered a knock at the door. A man calling himself Joseph stood outside, pulling his homespun cloak tightly around his neck. It was late, it was cold, and he and his young wife needed a room. A glance told the innkeeper the woman was heavy with child. He could barely hear himself talk with so much noise behind him, but he managed to explain that there was no room, only an empty stall or two in the stable out back. Shrugging his shoulders, the innkeeper quickly apologized and slammed the door. Outside, Joseph stood for a moment listening to the laughter inside. Back in the stillness of the night, Mary waited. The young couple made their way to the stable, and while music and laughter and feasting went on just yards away behind the walls of the inn, the Son of God quietly entered history. Sometimes the best moments of the Christmas season do not happen during the crowded parties or the rush of holiday preparations. They don't occur in the music and laughter, the camaraderie and feasting. When I think of special Christmas memories, I think of those quiet moments when God unexpectedly surprised me with Himself, with an overwhelming sense of His nearness and love. In the midst of so much activity, so much going on, so many days on the calendar filled with appointments or parties, God seeks out the quiet heart and speaks to us in a still, small voice. Think of the stable in Bethlehem. Somehow it stands serene. What a contrast to the celebrating going on in that inn. Who would have supposed? Who would have suspected? If someone had only taken the time to peer out a back window toward the stable, if someone had only dropped what he was doing to leave the party and go check on his donkey, if someone had only slipped away from the festivities for a moment to seek a quiet moment outside. Just think of what they might have witnessed. Perhaps they would have seen the angels, maybe the shepherds, and yes, even the Son of God. Take the time this Christmas season to step outside the clamor and excitement. Visit the stable and ask God to speak to you in the quiet and serenity and stillness. He will. The Birthplace of the King by William Barclay. From the Gospel of Matthew, Volume 1. When the Lord of glory came to this earth, he was born in a cave where men sheltered the beasts. The cave in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem may be that same cave, or it may not be. That we will never know for certain. But there is something beautiful in the symbolism that the church where the cave is has a door so low that all must stoop to enter. It is supremely fitting that every man should approach the infant Jesus upon his knees. Jesus, Who Is He? By Tim LaHaye, from Jesus, Who Is He? No person other than Jesus has been addressed by the following titles, because no other person qualifies for them. Some of these titles were given to him by angels, others by disciples or followers, or even by Hebrew prophets. No one title fully describes him. To understand who he really was and who he is in his second coming, all must be considered together. One thing is certain. No one else comes close to deserving even one of these titles. The Almighty, the Mighty God. The Word was God. My Lord and my God. Our Savior Jesus Christ. Wonderful. Counselor. The Father of Eternity. The Prince of Peace. Alpha and Omega. The First and Last. God blessed forever. The Christ. Jehovah. The beginning and the ending. The Lord. Savior. The Holy One. Lord of all. Emmanuel. the way, the truth, the life. King of kings, Lord of lords. In the history of the world, no one has ever risen from a carpenter's shop to assume such lofty titles. His life can only be explained by the fact that he was indeed the Son of God in a unique sense.
Thank you for listening on Second Chance Ministry.